Well, y'all know what that sound means. It's time for another Drum Talk TV interview. And I have to tell you, folks, I am absolutely thrilled to have one of my bucket list guests with us. Chester, I've wanted you on for the 12 years and 4.5 months of Drum Talk TV, actually. So this is really an honor. I really appreciate you making time.
Well, thank you, man. I'm just honored to be asked, actually. Appreciate it.
Thanks. So much to talk about. And right out of the gate, I really want to get into this new album with this new band, Cosmic Cathedral, and the new album, Deep Water. And we got to give some shout outs to your fellow bandmates, Neil Morse of course, Transatlantic, Flying Colors, and the Neil Morse Band. I don't know how they came up with that name. And then Phil Key of Glass Harp. We got Byron House, a session player, Robert Plant, Allison Krauss, not too much of slouch players that he's played with.
Right. No, pretty serious player, fun to play with, man.
Yeah. And, you've got such a great pedigree as well, of course, which we'll get into. But I got to ask this. Did you ever, and maybe in your world, it's like just so natural, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, did you ever imagine yourself being 76 years old and being in a band? Like, what's the deal?
Who imagines themselves when you start out as being 76? I mean, it just doesn't happen,
Right.
I'm still wondering when it happened.
When you were in your 30s, what was your perception of a 70-something-year-old and the music they listened to, right?
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I had much concept. I remember when I was 21 and I was touring with Jack McDuff, the jazz organist. And I remember Jack was 42 when I was 21. And I was thinking, man, when I get to be that age, I'm going to do things differently than he's doing. It's like, I started doing the club thing at 13. So, the idea of getting to this point, it just doesn't even enter your mind, It just, my mom wasn't even that old, so it's like there's no perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still going, still able to play. I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
I survived a pretty nasty leg injury a couple of years ago. My own doings. I stopped exercising, and I've always treated drumming like a sport, so you stay fit to play your sport.
Right.
And I just got lazy and stopped working out and stopped running and stopped rollerblading and all this, my usual stuff. But I'd go play hard and the muscles weren't limber and loose, and I almost trashed the tendon off my right hip.
Wow.
So it takes over a year of physical therapy and lots of resistance training. Got to do the weights and this amazing therapy thing called blood flow restriction therapy, BFR. And I put on, I just started one more round. I think this will be the last round, but go without it for a while, and then for like a tune-up. And they put like a blood pressure cuff on the leg, the damaged muscles and stuff. And you know how when you get your blood pressure checked, they crank that thing all the way up.
Yeah.
Well, when it's
I hate
cranked
that.
but that's when you do the workout. When it's cranked all the way up, your
Yeah.
leg turns purple and causes the muscles to swell. But they swell and they stay that way with strength.
Wow.
And, because at its between that, at the same time that happened, I had an infected disc.
Oh, good grief.
It was a double whammy. It was I've had 3 back surgeries. So after the last one, I think a couple of months or a month after the last one, it was like a little nerve activity. So we did an epidural shot, and my doctors thinking that the infection happened, it could be something microscopic, but if it doesn't belong in there.
Right.
When they did the MRI, he said the disc looks like something had been chewing on it. So
Wow.
I spent I think it was almost 10 weeks on 2 different antibiotics because when they did the culture, it wouldn't identify what it was. So they hit you with everything they got, make sure they get it.
Yeah.
So between that, hooked up to all these hoses because like a line in your arm the whole time. So between that, I got down to 118 pounds.
Wow, really?
Like literally skin and bones. It was frightening.
Because aren't you like 6 feet or so?
I used to be. I measured myself the other day, and I won't tell you how far I've dropped. But at this age, you shrink. Just get ready.
Yeah, I
You know,
have between losing the hair and posture. Yeah.
well, yeah, we won't even talk about the hair. But anyway, I'm having a bad hair day tonight. But no, seriously, it's like I'm down to 5'10".
Okay, wow. Yeah, because I think when
All
the
my,
first
I
time we
mean, all my pants are too long now. It's like I got to go buy. I need a new wardrobe.
right, I think you were like 6 feet when we met, because I used to be 5'8". I think I'm
Uh-huh.
5'7" now if I'm lucky,
Right.
you
It
know?
happens, man. You can't.
Yeah,
I mean, birthdays come with other issues.
right, right. Now, did any of your back issues, were they a result of drumming at all?
No, no,
No? Okay.
absolutely not. No, my doctor explained L4, L5. If you a vertical human being, doesn't happen to everybody, but that takes the brunt of being vertical.
Yeah.
And my doctor explained to me, he says, it's the exact same amount of pressure as a Mack truck parked on the street, just standing still is what's on that L4,
Oh,
L5.
wow.
So,
That's crazy.
that's the way it happened. And, but basically, the surgery, there's three different surgeries. One, it wasn't a major thing. Well, I mean, anytime they cut on you, it's major, but the disc was bulging out, so they went in and shaved it down.
Mhm.
Me not knowing enough of what not to do, a year later, I drove 11 hours straight up to Baltimore, family funeral, and then did the same thing 3 days later, not knowing. And when I would drive, I would sit up really straight, and that all that pounding caused it to
Yeah.
bulge out on the other side. So then they had to do a fusion, but it was a
Wow.
different doctor. But he didn't do it wasn't a typical fusion where they take the disc out. He just built posts out of bone graft. The disc is still there, except it's not doing anything. But it can't close down on the nerve anymore. And then by the time we needed the third surgery, the disc above it was developed bone spurs, more birthday stuff, and the disc above that was starting. So now I'm the proud owner of two rods, eight discs, and no pain.
Wow, and back at it with a great new album.
Oh, absolutely.
How did this band come together? Can you talk about that? How the
Neil
project
and
came together?
I, we met backstage at a Steve Hackett concert. Steve was playing Nashville.
Mhm.
For those who don't know, I'm sure there's not many that don't know, but Steve was one of the original guitarists with Genesis. Him and I remained good friends. And so
Yeah.
he was on one of his solo tours, came through Nashville. I guess him and Neil had met on many occasions. So we both ended up at his dressing room after the show. No, before the show, actually. And we went back and hung out with him. Uh, then we actually were sitting kind of next to each other during the show, and man, he was all over the Prague thing. He just loves it.
Yeah.
I kind of got into it accidentally. I mean, Genesis, when I started with Genesis, there were no hits, there were no singles. It was all prog.
Right.
So that
Right.
that was my, and I mean, prior to that, I toured with Zappa for a couple of years and did a bunch of recording with him.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they didn't classify his stuff as prog because it was all the
Yeah.
ingredients except for the long tunes. I mean, but he would string things together. Like one of my favorite albums was Apostrophe, which is
Absolutely.
one of his little operettas. It's like the whole thing just ties together. It's the story of
Yeah.
Manu,
That was my
Eskimo
entry
kid.
point to Zappa. I was in a band that the bass player put that record on I was living
Yeah.
with, and it was like, "Whoa."
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And then to be double drumming along with Ralph Humphrey, who recorded that stuff, man,
Right.
it was really cool. It was
Yeah.
really cool. And so anyway, that was my introduction to it all. It's really cracking me up that suddenly I'm back doing prog because a couple of years ago I did an album and a tour with a band, Australian prog band called Unitopia.
Oh, yeah.
Really good stuff. Really good stuff, by the way. But anyway, this thing with Neil, we decided, he called up a few days later. He got my info from Steve and said, "Let's go have lunch." And then we had lunch near my place. Came over to my place and jammed for a while, just keyboards and drums. Then we
Mhm.
went out to his place and jammed. He had his engineer there to document everything. And I think we might have did that twice. Then we had a conversation like, well, what other guys can we bring in on this thing? And we both had played with Phil Kagi and Byron House. I mean, I think I had brought both names up, and it resonated with him because he had great experiences with both of those guys as well.
Right.
We got together, we just jammed. We first couple of times we got together and jammed, and then Phil Keaggy ended up with an appendix operation. They caught it
Oh,
before it burst, but it was he was there. He was laid out the whole yeah. He was down for quite a while, and then when he thought he was ready to come in and join us in the studio, he had like severe trigger fingers, you know, and
oh,
ended up having to get the surgery for that. So he ended up not tracking with us, but he added his parts later, and co-wrote one of the songs. But for the most part, the bulk of the jams, first couple of days we jammed together, but then the bass player Neil and I jammed a few more times, and which became songs. I mean, there's two songs. First one, uh, yeah, hard. Let's see, what was it? Oh goodness, I can't. I need to. We only had titles. Like we didn't have titles at the beginning. Okay.
yeah. All runs
Heart,
together, I'm sure.
yeah. So well, Heart of Life was Neil wrote, and
Mhm.
what's the other one?
I've
I
been
won't make
listening
it.
to
Yeah,
a
I won't
lot.
make it was one that Neil wrote. Everything else was co-written from jams. You know.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and
Was
Neil.
it intended to be a project from the beginning, or did it feel
Well,
organically
we after
developing
we
into
did
one?
after we jammed those couple of times, it felt really good. And then so Neil
Mhm.
was saying, "Man, that's you guys interested in that? Just taking this a little further." And as it turned out, I guess he had sent some of what we were doing to the label, Inside Out,
Inside Out, yep.
and they were very interested, and so they made arrangements to help us get it going. They were generous and gave us a little incentive and a little made it possible
Great.
to put aside the time to do it. So we met for 2 weeks in August. We committed to 2 weeks in August to just track.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, we collaborated. Mostly Neil did the arrangements, and then we would tweak things. And so yeah, we just went in and started tracking. First thing we tracked was that Heart of Life, the first one of Neil that he had written. Which the guy is so man, he's so productive. He was supposed to be on vacation in Florida or somewhere, and in his room when they wrote the whole piece, the whole 13-minute thing, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
he had a
Wow.
keyboard, he had his keyboard with him and stuff. And so we had to learn that one first, and then the rest was like I say, we just put together, listened to all the jams we did, and put them together. And he had already arranged some of it, like the whole Deep Water Suite. Him and his engineer Jerry Guidros, who's brilliant. I guess has been a drummer in a former life, and he's got a great sense of rhythm and tying things
Oh,
together.
that's perfect, yeah.
So they between them, because he would sometimes suggest, hey man, what about this part going there, that sort of thing, or a jam, maybe part of a jam we'd forgotten about because he listened to everything.
Mm,
And so yeah, we went in and started tracking this stuff, with a game plan, and
that's awesome.
we were all pretty stoked on how it turned out. There was one other element that I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about in a prog world, but the other thing that him and I were both Christians, and he was really interested uh, in finding local guys where we don't have to like fly, for hours to try to get together,
Yeah,
and but who also shared the same spiritual point of view of us. And so this project, that's kind of where it's coming from.
that's
Besides the fact
great.
of having fun playing together, yeah, we never did a jam. We never did one thing that didn't start with prayer and just really
Oh, that's
just
wonderful.
welcoming in, like that other element, just letting the Lord lead
Yeah,
it. And I felt like, I mean, I've done a ton of projects. I mean, come on, but this
sure.
one feels really nice. This one feels like I've got a part in it for one, because
Right.
I've been the hired gun on so many projects.
Yeah,
And I've had a couple of bands, but this one is something I like, something special about it to me. Which is
that's
kind of hard
great.
to say, I guess, but.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the album drops, everybody. The album drops from Inside Out Music, April 25th. Are we
Yeah,
going to see you on the road, Chester, performing the album?
we're working on it, man. It's like finding the right promoters, putting that whole thing together. That's not easy. I mean,
It's a
especially
different world
today.
in that aspect in the music industry, right? That's
Yeah,
when it has changed.
well, yeah, and I mean, if you're going to put a tour together, you need to start a year ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're going to do a decent sized tour, I mean, we're gonna do one thing in October here in Nashville, one of his Morse Fest things, and
Hmm.
it's going to be at a church actually where he's done several there. he does them in England and quite a few other cities. He does these Morse Fest things in. So
Right.
we're gonna do one of those in October. In the meantime, we're trying to line up a warm up gig before we do it. I'm not sure how much of the album we're gonna try and do, but it's a lot of stuff to remember.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we did it in sections for the most part.
It's like learning your own stuff all over again, right? Creating it
Pretty
and then
much.
learning it to perform it.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so basically we're gonna schedule a few rehearsals this summer. We're gonna take our times putting it all together because it is a lot of music, and then because then we got to decide which pieces to play.
Right. Yeah, just do all of them. Make it easy.
Well, it could come down to that. It could come
That'd
down
be
to that.
awesome. So far, what I've heard, it's great. I can't wait to get the full album, and it's coming out in different colored vinyls as well. There's some
Yeah,
different
yeah.
packaging, so there's some really interesting stuff. Inside Out Music always does such a great job with that, so I want to thank them. Let's rewind all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Why drums? Why drums?
I didn't choose drums. They chose me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I had to play the drums.
that's awesome.
My
And that
mother,
was
my mother told me of a story which I haven't, and I have to say, I have to preface this. I have no memory of this whatsoever. Somebody bought me a toy drum, 5 or 6 years old, apparently,
mhm.
and I would go stand out on the front porch and play it. And she said people would come around.
Really?
I
Wow.
have no memory of that. I really don't. And
Interesting.
I remember fifth grade being the year that I actually had access in school. It wasn't a band, but like one teacher, she just had these instruments, and so I of course wanted the drums and the sticks. And but my mother showed me a letter that I'd written in fourth grade. One of those, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And it brought me to tears because it outlined my entire career pretty much.
Wow.
I mean, I had no memory of it. And I was there. I was at her place. She's gone now, but I was at her house one day, and she showed me this thing, and it messed me up. I mean, first of all, like I said, I didn't remember having. I didn't remember that was where I was at that age.
Right.
And then yeah, then you know, so
How old were you when you saw that letter again?
oh, I was on a break from Zappa or something,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
maybe even Weather Report. I don't know which one.
Yeah.
No, it was actually after that. I think it was early with Genesis,
Okay.
and she showed me this letter that had outlined almost everything I'd done to that point. The cool thing is there's still a few things that hadn't happened yet, so it's like, okay, we'll
Wow,
keep going.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing. What was it like working with Zappa? What was
it
that
was
like?
great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the guy was like, I had no problem. I need to plug this lamp, my little lamp thing in because it seems to be
Yeah, no
delaying
worries.
on me.
No worries.
I think I've got the right cord up here somewhere, and if not, I won't worry about it.
Because I think people have a perception of Frank where, and I don't know what the truth is, but that's why I'm asking. Some people have a perception that he was a general, extremely strict. I mean, he certainly was some sort of maestro and teacher, of course, at the same time, I'm guessing. But
If you played your parts and did your homework, there was no problem with Frank.
yeah,
Now, if you were like showing up and you don't have your stuff ready, that's a whole different story.
right. I could imagine.
That's
Yeah,
anybody. I mean, that's that. Pretty much.
right.
Um, yeah, I don't have a cord long enough to make this work. I do in the other room, but I don't want to interrupt it. I might angle the computer around if I'm too dark on one side or something.
Okay. But everything looks fine. Everything looks good.
Right, then,
You-
then
Yeah,
good. I'll leave it alone.
you're
So
good.
anyway, Frank. I mean, we were friends. I mean, the guy was like, I was fortunate to be with him in a period when he was happy. He loved the band. He really, he was very fair. He didn't I'm not aware of him mistreating anyone, especially his musicians.
Right.
I mean, well, what a band. But I
Yeah.
happened to jump in at a great time. You got George Duke, you got Ruth Underwood, Tom
Wow.
Fowler. I mean, good grief.
Yeah. Incredible band.
Napoleon Murphy Brock and I started at the same time because he had
Yeah.
heard him in Hawaii. I guess he was over there vacationing or something, And so we, had our auditions the same morning, which he
Hmm.
liked us both, and we started rehearsing that day. It was George Duke and Tom Fowler. It was a couple
Yeah.
of days later when the full band was there and scared me half to death when I heard the rest of the music. It was like, oh my, what did I get into?
Yeah. Did you
It
have
was
any idea what you were getting into?
huh?
Did you have any idea of what you're getting
Not at
into?
that
How
level.
could
I
you,
mean, I'd
right?
heard a couple of things. I'd heard a couple of things, lighter
Yeah.
things, but
Yeah.
I had no idea of the depth of what he was doing.
Right.
And so basically, we rehearsed for a month, 40 hours a week. You basically 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
Hmm.
And so Napoleon and I had pretty much the same schedule. Rehearsal were from 11 to 7. We'd get back, we'd stop and have dinner on the way to the hotel we were in, a little motel thing. And he'd go to his room, I'd go to mine, we'd crash out. I'd wake up about 2 or 3 in the morning, start practicing. I'd hear the saxophone crank up on the other side of the motel where he's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
After like a couple of hours of that, go back to sleep, get up, have breakfast, go to rehearsal. That was every day. That
Wow.
was the only way I could. That was the only way to really do it, to really get that stuff down. And then
Right.
halfway through, Frank mentions that, oh yeah, you can't take music on stage. You can't. I don't. Music stands on stage. So suddenly it's like, oh, and then I got to memorize this stuff. Okay.
Right. Crazy. Those were such different times. I mean, not
Mhm.
to minimize any great music that's out
Right.
now, because
Sure.
you
Absolutely.
mentioned,
But
that
it is
Australia
different.
band,
Yeah.
but back then the latitude and creativity was just, I don't know if we'll ever see that again.
Well, and the thing with Frank, he wrote everything.
Everything was written out literally.
Everything was written out.
He'd
Absolutely.
score every instrument, right?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
thought I thought I could read when I joined the band, but when I left it, my reading had like taken a giant leap forward.
Is that one of the biggest takeaways from that experience, playing with Frank?
Well, that and just his way of, and with having the two drummers, one day I've mentioned before, one day we both had like 5 piece kits. We show up one day, our kits are not on stage, and instead of in place of our kits, there were these two 12 piece Ludwig Octoplus kits that he
Uh-huh.
wanted us to play. And so we, decided how to set them up, and we went for it. Um, and because he would hear sometimes for some stuff, he was starting to hear two different drum parts. Some stuff we played in sync, and some things we had two distinctly different parts.
Hmm.
I was very often, Ralph would sometimes would be playing time, and I'd be over on the big toms and playing, you know, I mean, it kept changing up. Sometimes we'd be in two different time signatures playing together.
Wow.
But with a common one, which is really crazy, right?
Yeah.
And he could hear that stuff. I mean, he could stop. He would stop it, and it's like, nope, that ain't right. And he heard it. It's like,
Yeah.
and but the thing that's always, I've never heard anybody talk about the fact that Frank was one of the best teachers ever,
Hmm.
because all of those bands played that way. I mean, you got to be at a certain level to get the gig, fair enough,
Right.
but he had a way of taking you from one level to the next. I mean,
Well,
if when we had those insane licks to play, he would start them pretty slow until everything is exactly accurate like he wants it. Then he would start taking the tempo up faster. We might spend. I remember after an hour on one part of a tune, one lick, it was like I didn't. Fortunately, I didn't open my mouth, but I'm thinking, what does this guy want? I mean, come on, man. We've been playing this thing for an hour. It's tight. What does he want? Well, after another 45 minutes, almost an hour, when we got through it, it was like I was shocked at how tight and how fast we were playing these insane parts. And it was like everybody was breathing as one. We were like nailing that
right.
stuff. And it was like, oh, that's how you do it. Okay.
Yeah. Once you hear that final result, you knew
Oh,
what
yeah.
you were
Then,
after.
then I realized, yeah. I mean, nobody complained because I mean, they already knew I was the new kid, and it was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And there was an unspoken rule is that it's fine if you can't play it that day, but nobody could not play it the next day.
Mm.
I mean,
Nice.
I remember
Yeah.
George Duke. Uh, he had like, whatever was the state of the art keyboard stack in those days, which is basically a world or two of Fender Rhodes, a mini Moog, and I guess some kind of an ARP, not the big one with the cable shit.
Right.
Odyssey, I think it might have been. So anyway, Frank's got him playing. With one hand, he's got him playing in 4/4. Then he gave him a line in three to play on the other hand, and George just played him like it was nothing to it. It's like, okay. Then he said, George, I want you to. Then he told George, I want you to sing this line over it, but it was in five.
Oh, wow.
And George tried it a few times, and George says, Frank, sorry, man, I can't do it, but I'll have it tomorrow. And I'm thinking, okay, tomorrow, huh? Tomorrow comes. I've messed up something on my screen here, but anyway, it got to be the next day, and George played it like he'd been doing it all his life.
Wow,
He just
incredible.
breezed through it, and I'm thinking, okay, got it. That's how this
Yeah.
goes,
An
And
amazing
Frank could
symphony.
almost never play his guitar parts on a new song.
Right.
Very rarely could he play his guitar parts on a new song because he didn't write from his instrument.
Yeah. Yeah, he scored everything else, right?
Well, I've watched him on a plane write out new charts and pass them out at sound check, and every note was perfect. No instrument, no keyboard, no anything.
Wow, incredible.
He
What a
could
work
actually
ethic,
he
right?
could hear it in his head. He could hear it in his head.
Yeah. Yeah. Just an incredible work ethic.
Yes, I mean
Yeah.
we'd finish 8 hours of rehearsal. He'd go to the studio and tweak
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know when he slept.
Crazy. What if you could pick just a few words to describe your time with Weather Report, what would that
Mhm.
be?
Okay, my saying is that with Frank, I learned how to play all the notes. With Weather Report, I had to figure out which ones to leave out.
Perfect.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the communication between that band, uh, like nothing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
the tunes were different enough, but there were times we would do something together. We would all do things together, never rehearsed and planned, and it would just be amazing. I mean, there was this incredible. They were all about you know staying out of the way and letting the music flow through you.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, the longer you play, the longer, especially in jazz, you learn to do that.
Yeah.
But the level, I mean, listening to Wayne Short and Joe Zavol every night, I mean, come on.
Yeah. How much of that, Chester, was attributed to more than just the musicianship, but band chemistry? Or was it
Oh, that's a
mostly like that organically just
oh
because
major part of that.
Yeah.
Major part of that. I mean, basically, Frank canceled a tour. That's the only reason I even ended up doing that. Frank
Right.
had canceled a tour. I'd only been in L.A. I guess over a year, but we toured so much. I didn't have many contacts in L.A. So I'm thinking, man, what am I going to do? Alfonso Johnson and I have known each other. It's been playing together since I think '69, maybe.
Wow.
So this was '75,
Right.
and we were good friends. In fact, he called me the night before he left to go play with Weather Report because he was playing with Chuck Mangione. And he
Mhm.
called me from the gig in New York. Said, "Man, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm going to join Weather Report." He was pretty excited about it. And I mean, we were that close. And so, he we he calls me up. We were talking in L.A. He said, "Man, why don't you come down and jam with the guys? We're in town." It's like, really? And he said, "Yeah," because it was my favorite band, of course.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Yeah, we went through so many drummers last year, man. We got to figure this thing out." He said, "Oh man, I don't really want to audition." He said, "No, no, no, it's not an audition. Come jam with the guys." And so I go down there. There's another guy with his drum set, of course. so
Yeah.
so we
No
go back.
pressure, right? No
Right. So
pressure.
we go back and forth. And the drummer, he was amazing, wonderful drummer, guy named Woody Theus, went by the
Mhm.
name Sunship. He's passed away. He died really young. I'm not sure what it was,
Yeah.
but the guy was phenomenal. And I'm thinking, man, this guy's got the gig. There's no way. But then they didn't call songs. Everything was improvised on the moment. You know, and we would go back and forth. And they did like a ballad kind of thing, very ethereal kind of ballad. And the guy, it wasn't his wheelhouse. He didn't know what to do.
Oh,
And I've been in one of the bands I had been in was really the perfect prep for Weather Report. Actually, I was living in Boston for a period, playing with this really amazing band, and yeah, it wasn't foreign to me. I was able to kind of fit in there, and it was like I ended up, we started rehearsing the next week for a tour. So
wow. Just slid right in.
yeah,
Yeah.
And as the time went on, and we just laughed all day, every day. I mean, it was very much about chemistry. Yeah.
There's a lesson there, I think, about band chemistry. It's one thing to be in the company of great players and,
Hmm.
have that musicality, but I think there's definitely a lot of value when everyone's on the same page, whether it's
Hmm.
mentally,
Oh,
emotionally,
yes,
spiritually,
yes,
like you mentioned earlier.
absolutely.
That goes a long way. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's
I
just like
mean,
any other job. No one wants to go to work with people they don't get along with, or there's always that one
absolutely.
guy,
Right, right. Yeah,
usually the guitar player.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And to try
that's
to make
awesome.
music in that with that going on that's really difficult, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of guitar players, and you mentioned Steve Hackett earlier, one of my favorite things that you've played on was the first album Steve Hackett did, Genesis
Mm.
Revisited. I just love that album, the
Oh, okay.
reworkings of those songs and everything.
Right.
At the time, I had a friend at Capitol Records, and I got a pre-release version of it,
Okay.
and it was just. I think if a CD had grooves, I would have worn the grooves out on that thing. I just listened to it so much. It's just
Yeah,
such a
and I did one of his really early solo albums as well.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was "Please Don't Touch," I believe was the name of it. But yeah, that was a
and
really good album as well, actually. Yeah.
yeah, and my entry point to you and Steve Hackett was 1977. I was 14, and a friend of mine put on
Okay.
Seconds Out, and Seconds Out was honestly, the first time I ever heard Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was always a voracious album cover reader and
Oh, okay.
examiner.
Okay.
And so, going through what's with the two drum sets, my friend who was 5 years older than me is explaining all this. I
Mm-hmm.
was 14, he was 19. And I just fell deep down the Genesis rabbit hole. Saw you with them, I don't know, 5 or 7 times,
Oh, wow.
something like that.
What
Um,
city?
LA at the Forum each time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I grew up in a
Did you happen to be there the night the guy jumped on Phil's drums and you
no,
pulled
but
it off?
no, I didn't see that, but I was there when Bill Bruford showed up, I think on the Abacab tour that might have been, when Bill
Okay.
showed up and played, timbales, I think, on I
Right.
Know What I
Yeah.
Like. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that very clearly, but I missed that one.
Yeah. There was one, and it's interesting because we were right. Well, they don't sell the seats behind the stage, right?
Right,
So, and where we were though, balcony was like kind of right there. It's just but some guy had made his way around to that. I mean, a couple of oddballs were sitting back there. I guess they wanted to be like closer to the thing or whatever.
right.
And so next thing we know, speaking of carpet crawl, we're doing carpet crawls, and all of a sudden, Phil turns around and stares at me, and it's like, what? And I hear it because it wasn't Mike. The drum, his mics were off. But some guy had jumped on his kit and was just wailing away. I mean, the guy, this was his big
Oh,
moment and
wow.
made no sense whatsoever, but he was just going for it. And I happened to look over and it's like Phil heard it first because he's down front.
Yeah.
And he stared at me like, "What are you doing?" It's like, so the drum tech, jumped and grabbed the guy and wrestled him off the stool.
Wow.
And we had this would have been 78. Yeah, I know when this
Okay.
was. This would have been 78
Duke
because
tour.
we had this. They already had. They were always state of the art visuals, right?
Right.
And so we had this new laser that had never been done before. It did 4 different colors, and this was probably the first time it worked right the whole tour. And the guy in being wrestled and falling off the back of the stage grabbed the cable, and it
Oh,
never worked right again.
oh, wow. So that would have been then there were 3 tour, I think,
I think
probably
so. Yeah.
78, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and it never worked again after that properly? Crazy.
No.
Wow, I wonder who that was. Um,
I don't know.
eh
I don't think he felt very good when they got him wherever they were taking him because the police showed up and the security guys got him out and then the police. I mean,
right,
I don't
that's
think it went well for
crazy.
him that night.
Dangerous. There's some people saying hi here. Let's give some shout outs real quick. We'll get back to some Genesis talk if that's all right. Bobby Polino Chester, great player. Janetta Tibbs in Oregon. I've got 2 of our many, 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 many children there and their
Oh,
families.
okay.
Got 2
Cool.
daughters and
Cool.
their families there. Patrick, uh, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Patrick Huggins. Huygens. Greets from the Netherlands. Great to see this. Chester Drum Hero and Kimberly Filicamo says hi.
Oh, great keyboard player, good singer and keyboard player in Boston. Good friend.
Yeah, that's cool.
Good
And
friend.
we'll talk about your solo album after we talk about Genesis a little bit. I think people would be mad at me if I didn't bring up Genesis. I'm sure you are so talked out about Genesis,
A
but
little bit, but we'll go.
yeah, a lot of people know you from that.
Well, I
So
mean,
I'll
people
go
don't
with
realize
this.
how long ago that was. I mean, it's,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah.
Even I was a kid and I'm in my 60s. So there you go. What
It's
was
true.
some of your favorite music to perform with Genesis? I mean, you
Oh,
covered
goodness.
so much from Supper's Ready to That's All, almost
It's
every
true.
style of music in between, including Paper Late and, other songs with the horns from Earth, Wind and Fire. What were some of your favorite musical moments that you loved to indulge in or look forward
Well, a lot of the stuff where we did double drums. I mean,
to?
because it's such a powerful, tight sound, and we locked in pretty easily together.
Right.
So a lot of the early prog instrumental sections, were really fun. Where we, do a lot of that kind of stuff. My favorite individual song was so unlike Genesis, which was throwing it all away because I grew up
Oh,
I grew up playing grooves. I grew up in the soul music era.
right.
And that's something about that song really really touched me. I really love that song. But I mean, it was very little to do drum wise. It was just a great groove.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of I mean, I had occasion to find the first three gigs I ever did with them in '77.
Really?
Very first gig was, I think it was called, what's the name of the club? It was the reopening of a big rock club in London.
Hmm.
They were in a new building and stuff. And unknown to me, the whole thing went out on the radio every night.
Oh, wow.
And I listened to the first night. It was like, oh no. It was like, I mean, we only had like 9 days of rehearsal.
Hmm.
And that was in November. The tour wasn't until January. So we had like a couple of days touch up in December.
Wow.
And I mean, I got no sleep. That I'm up until like 3, 4 in the morning because it was too much to try to. There's no way to just listen to those songs and know them.
Right.
So I literally wrote out everything Phil ever played on those recordings. I wish I
Wow.
could find that book. I have no idea where that little manuscript paper book was,
Oh,
but I
that.
literally wrote all of his parts out. And they don't read. None of them read. So they were always pretty amazed when they first day. It's like, okay, guys, the only way this is going to work, give me 5 songs and I'll chart them. I'll have them ready for the next day. And so I'd be up all night writing out drum parts for like for the next 5 songs.
Wow.
And then I'd put them up on the stage and play them, and they were amazed because they'd never seen that before. And
That's awesome.
and that's how I got through those rehearsals. By the third night, it felt pretty good, I must admit. It cleaned up real good by the third night. But yeah, I've actually got those stashed away in my computer somewhere. Man, I'm trying to remember the name of that first club. And the club owner is like, he just took such a joy in telling you how he had to fire the Stones the first night. They were so bad.
Oh, wow. Who would have ever thought? That's hilarious.
The Marquee,
Oh, the
the Marquee
marquee. Yeah.
in
Oh,
London.
wow.
Yeah, it was the grand
Yeah.
opening in the new building. Yeah,
Wow. So that would have been 77 or 6?
77, January
77.
1st, 77, January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
Wow. Amazing. And there's a couple other hellos here. Renee Barthen, awesome drummer. Um, I guide, what do you say? I got Chester at the time when I worked at, Pearl Drums. Send him my regards. There you go, Renee.
Okay, cool.
And I can't read the next one. It's in a different language, but thanks for
All right.
chiming in. I'm good with
Okay.
different languages, but in fact, English isn't even my first language. A lot of people don't know that. They can't detect the accent. My first language is sarcasm. Okay. Um, so when you I've been wanting to ask you this. Every time a new Genesis album came out and you were going to tour with them, did you hear the music? Did you get pre-release music or did you
Yes,
not hear
yes,
that? Okay, I
absolutely.
was real
Oh yeah.
curious how that went down.
Yeah, as soon as
How
the
far
tunes were done, they would send me what they were doing. Yes.
great. And then you'd rehearse the tour, of course, ahead of time
Right.
with more than 9 days of rehearsal as time went on.
Well,
I'm
they they
guessing.
they got into the 40-hour a week thing as well
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
after the first tour.
Yeah. And then you toured with Phil for some of his solo work for
Yes,
years.
yes.
There all those years. What was the biggest thing as a musician or a businessman in the music industry that you took away working with Genesis?
Well, the best thing was that I didn't negotiate my own stuff. I had a dear friend who had been Zappa's tour manager that
Nice.
offered to negotiate for me because I'm totally out of my league. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I get nervous even now talking about money. It's like,
Yeah.
So that was a biggie. Um, but no, they yeah, I mean, I've been really blessed that I've played with some of the top people in each genre that I've been in. I mean, come on, like Weather Report,
Yeah.
Zappa. One of
Crazy.
my very first tour with a name person was Ben E. King. You know,
Yeah.
doing Stand By Me and all that stuff. And yeah, Jack McDuff was at the top of the whole jazz organ thing. And when I grew up in Baltimore, every club had a B3, so I just grew up playing with organists. Organ players. Very rarely played with bass players because they played all the bass on the organ. So that was the first, named jazz tour.
Right.
But I got to record with people like Freddie Hubbard. It was pretty good run, man.
Yeah.
But my takeaway from all of that, from all these different groups, and I think I came away feeling like the way to do this thing and be successful is to do honest music. I mean, a lot of Genesis fans complain when they started having hits because all of a sudden they're not doing prog. But being around those guys, their attitude wasn't like we're going to write a hit song. Um, I mean, though each one of those songs probably could have turned into an extra long prog piece,
Right.
but they started realizing that it was a complete thought. They still
Yeah.
wrote with the same quality. It just didn't take it, instead of taking 15 minutes, they got it done in 5.
Right.
And the
I
good thing is
remember.
this is during the ARR period, the album
Yeah.
oriented rock period, so you could play a 4 or 5 minute song.
Yeah.
And so that really worked in their favor. And no, they were just as careful about their singles as they were about the big prog pieces.
I remember Tony Banks talking about how in the early days they always wanted to write hits, is like that was their thing. And if you look at their backgrounds, well, especially more so maybe Phil's
Mhm.
backgrounds was the soul and all that Aretha
Right.
Franklin, that kind of stuff.
Well,
Those were hits back then.
Well,
That
the other thing, Phil didn't think he could write. Phil's attitude was, I'm a drummer, I don't know how to write. But
wow.
then unfortunately this divorce left him with an empty house and a piano in a studio, and he just poured out his heart on the piano, and he played
Yeah.
just enough basic chords to his chord structure on his first album are pretty simple.
Yeah.
And there just happened to be these great melodies and heartfelt stories, and people, everybody's been there. People,
Yeah.
responded to it, as opposed to a lot of the early Genesis and one of the hallmarks of the prog thing, and even some of the later writing. It's like writing a mini novel.
Right.
You have a storyline and you write it, but it's not necessarily you. You're not exposing yourself. Whereas Phil's first album, he exposed himself.
Yeah.
And so then when that, and as he got confidence as a writer, then he would also write storylines. I mean, In the Air Tonight, it's really hilarious. Like, he would talk about all the people that would contact him saying they know the real story of In the Air Tonight. And Phil was like, there's no story. I wrote a script. I wrote a story. It's not a real life anything. People, he said the worst was some school teacher, sent him a thing saying, that she had assigned all the students to try to write something around it. And of course, she knew the real story, but and he's like,
Yeah.
"There's no real story."
People come to their own conjecture with stuff like that
Exactly,
sometimes and assume that
exactly.
they
Yeah.
that they know. You've had such an amazing career in life. Do you think you'll ever do an autobiography, Chester?
Oh man, here we go again. Well, and I only say it that way because
You get asked
I've
that a
been
lot?
asked numerous times. I don't think my life is that interesting. I mean, not like the big guys that really do all the famous, really. I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, it's my life.
Yeah.
I keep saying I'm going to sit down and start on my wife. It's funny because my wife just finished a book she's been working on for 20 some years, which didn't start out to be a book, but and I see her discipline, and she's been hanging in there for years with this thing. It goes in spurts. So I finally, got my good pen, and I keep saying I'm just going to start while I can remember things. Start just putting it down in snippets, whatever I remember,
Right.
asking a lot of questions of people who were there, which there ain't that many anymore. Oh my goodness! I mean, I'm at an age where a lot of people are gone that I
Yeah.
worked with. I mean, a lot of them, and it's like, and so between family and close friends, just try to gather what I can.
Good.
I don't. I mean, I taught for 20 years at Belmont University here and fell in love with teaching. And apparently, my way of doing it wasn't the norm because I didn't. I started out with music ed, but that lasted for 2 years, and I was going to transfer to a 4-year school, but I got the Zappa audition, so that ended that for a while.
Yeah.
While I was in the middle of the teaching for 20 years, I finished my undergrad. They were expecting me to jump right into the master's program, but it took me like 5 years or so because they would cover so many classes for me, which was great. They helped pay for it. But then I was still touring and still doing gigs around town and then teaching anywhere from 12 to 25 students in a couple of days. And I was just burned out. I just couldn't handle doing school right then.
Yeah.
And then I realized unless I'm going to really devote my career to teaching, it's not like I need another degree. But but I've always loved writing, and every now and then I have to practice my handwriting because I love to sit there and write by hand. But after you don't do it for a while, it's like anything else; it gets really messed up. So I got to
Yeah.
practice my writing again. No, my plan is to start putting it down, start putting it all down. I don't know if I want to do. I mean, I do want to do a drum instructional book, but I'm embarrassed to say this. I just did an interview, did a podcast with a friend, one of my former students, and we had a really good time because he was like reminiscing about and reminding me of stuff that went on during that period. But unknown to me, while I was there teaching, because my exercises were really well, I taught them what I practiced. And some days when I didn't know what to teach them, I literally would pray on the way up to the school. It's like, Lord, you got to give me something to teach these kids. And I would get something that I couldn't play. I'd hear it in my head clearly, and then I'd have to sit down and work out how to do it. Which taught me how to teach it. Right.
Right. How to facilitate it basically.
Yeah.
You
Right.
had
Well,
your head.
after a few times of doing it, I finally came up with a way that make learning a lot more efficient and quicker. Which.
Yeah.
But anyway, but unknown to me, all the students called my stuff instead of exercises, they were all called Chestercisers. I guess it's
Yeah.
like Steve Gadd and his Gaddaments as opposed to
Yeah.
rudiments.
Yeah.
But they were real different because again, I addressed real life situations.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, I kind of want to combine that, but I don't know. Well, I guess I got to do more than one book.
Yeah. Well,
But
I ask because there's so many lessons for musicians in your stories, and there
gotcha.
would
Yeah.
be so much value in that. That's why I bring it up.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm going to start putting things down and see if they make sense. But like, I'm not
Great.
trying to write a book, but just start putting things that I remember
Yeah.
while I remember them. Hopefully I
Great.
won't ever get to the point where I don't remember stuff. Although, man, stuff goes. It's like
Yeah.
I'm pretty good on years ago. It's like where'd I put my phone? That's the stuff.
Yeah. Same.
Like
Totally
I
get
don't know where my watch is today. It's crazy,
that.
and I never
Funny.
lose my watch. But
Yeah. During the pandemic, an album came together, Wake Up
yes,
Call, your
yeah,
solo
yeah.
album. Let's talk about that. Talk about how that came together and what the result is.
Oh man, that's my favorite thing I've done. Yeah, as a drummer, sometimes you're sitting there and you jam, and it's like, man, I wish I had a song where I could do that. Ah, okay. And wish I had a song where I could sort of play that lick or play that groove.
Right.
Well, in this case, I was talking with my friends. They were my first band, Pee Wee Hill and Michiko Hill, his wife. She's Japanese and she's keyboard, she's bass. And we still stay in touch. And it was like, so COVID, what are you guys doing? How's it going? Their daughter is their gig. I don't know if you've heard of Judith Hill. If not, you need to check her out.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
her parents were my band.
Oh.
And my son was studying piano with Michiko with his mom. She taught all the musicians' kids, and she'd be the littlest one, like a couple of years behind everybody, but she'd be tagging along and learning piano.
Great.
And she's turned into a monster. But anyway, so I called him up. He says, well, the tours are all canceled. Nobody's booking the studio because they run a studio. And he said, we're just sitting around jamming with the drum machine. And I'm like, man, let me sing you something to jam with. Don't do that. And I just sit down and played for like 5 minutes. And whenever I play by myself, I'm hearing stuff in my head. I'm not necessarily hearing. Sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's just a vibe, you know. But I just had a bunch of fills and pocket changed a few times and all of that. I just sent it to them.
Right.
Well, a couple of like a week later, a couple of weeks later, they send it back and they've written this song around it that freaked me out. If you get to hear it, it's track 3 on the album
Okay.
called Hide and
Definitely go
Seek.
into that.
And it was like, you got to be kidding me. How in the world did you come up with that? She said, they said, well, we just went where you let it. Now, when we had the band, we started out jamming together, then we started writing together. And then I started booking gigs, and we were pretty much good to go. And then I was on a retainer with Genesis, and I got the phone call like, "We need you over here in a couple of weeks." And that was the end of that. Everybody had to find other stuff to do. We never could get it back together. But it was an amazing band, I thought. And so Caleb Quay was in the band, guitarist, like that helped Elton get his start. And a guy named Ronnie Van did a bunch of Motown sessions and stuff. And yeah, it was a pretty wonderful band. It was pretty fun. But
Awesome.
people and Michiko were the ones that I reached out to, and I sent them the tracks. And so there's 9 tracks. All of them started with me playing just different drum fills, stuff that I
That's so
wanted to
cool.
play. I did send a couple of melodies that Michiko developed and expanded. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. What
That's
they did
great.
was pretty amazing. Nobody was ever in the same room together. I had a couple of different horn players. A guy here in town named Jeff Coffin, plays with Dave Matthews Band. Used to play with Bella Fleck,
Oh
the
yeah.
Tones. Uh,
Nice.
Sheila Gonzalez, who plays with Dweezil. She played
Mhm.
on some stuff. And then the previous guitar. My son's playing guitar on on 3 of the tracks. My son's playing guitar.
That's great.
So
How
yeah, it's but yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with how it all turned out. And we
great.
played together so much in those days. I think they probably know me better than anybody musically.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
it really does not feel like tracks were not done in the same room. I mean,
Really nice.
no, I mean that's everybody's comment that's
Chemistry
heard
was
it
there.
that didn't know the story, was shocked when they found out we weren't in the same room at the same
Did it
time.
all remote. Yeah.
Because it
That's
was all,
awesome.
well, we had that kind of chemistry though. I mean, we played together a lot. I mean, to the point where a given week we probably played 2 or 3 times, and we'd have dinner at my house like maybe 3 or 4 times that week. And then when Pee and Michiko got married, we'd have dinner at their house.
Yeah.
So it was family.
That's awesome. So, folks, you got to check that out. And you've got to check out the new album, new band, 76 years old, starts a new band, Cosmic Cathedral,
Well,
Deep Water. It's
I,
just from
I
what I've
used
heard
to
so far, it's
I
great.
used to always be the youngest guy in the band, and now I'm
What
always the
happened?
oldest guy in the band. It's like, what's up with that?
It's a generational thing. Great cover, great music from what I've heard so far. It drops
Yeah.
from Inside Out Music, April
Really,
25th.
really happy with it. Really
Great.
happy with it.
It's, you should be proud of this. It sounds great. Everybody's on top form, different packaging, different colors, vinyls. If you're into vinyl's making a huge comeback. And this is a great one to get to know through
Yeah.
vinyl, CD, download, however you can find it. And Chester, I just want to thank you so much for taking time for coming on with me here on
Oh
Jump Talk.
man, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. And
And
folks, thank you
by the
for,
way, the
yeah.
Wake Up Call is also on Bandcamp under my name, and
Oh, great.
you can do the high res, you can do the 4824 or the CDs or the different color vinyls. We did the whole 9 yards.
Perfect. That's great. Folks, the links, Steve's going to put the links in the comments there so you can
Cool.
grab those. And Chester, if you don't mind, hang on for just a couple of minutes after we say
Okay.
goodbye to the audience. Folks, I want to thank you so much for joining
Everyone,
Chester and myself.
thanks
Yeah.
for logging on, and thanks for the comments, and hopefully we'll all cross paths one of these days.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.